President Trump is now on his way to Alaska for his high-stakes sit-down with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Joining us now is NBC's Washington correspondent, Alice Barr. Great to see you, Alice.
Good morning, Cheryl.
So the president just left Washington a few moments ago, insists he wants to stop the killing between Russia and Ukraine. How confident is the White House in thinking he can accomplish that?
Well, it's interesting. Excuse me. Right off the bat, frog in my throat. It's interesting because he was asked that very question yesterday, and he acknowledged that he's been trying for some time to get Vladimir Putin to agree to stop the fighting, and that every time he thinks he's going to get somewhere with that, he looks on the TV and sees that there's been another bombing. I'm going to toss back to you for the next question.
Yeah, we're
Cheryl.
watching video as he was leaving. I understand. I wish I could pass you a glass of water there, Alice. I understand that's happened to me 100 times. But as the president was leaving, he was saying that his hopes were high, but he threw out this phrase, "I give it a 25% chance." Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and he just spoke to reporters on board Air Force One and said that he thinks that something is going to come out of this, but he, laid down some ground rules of what he is and is not going to do. He said that he does think that discussions about territorial swaps and Ukraine having to give up some of its land will be on the table. That'll be part of what they are talking about. But he said he's not going to make any of those decisions for Ukraine. And he said he's not there to negotiate for Ukraine. He said he's there to get Ukraine to the table. And so he has said that he thinks that today is an important step, but that he wants to have another meeting before long that would include Ukrainian President Zelensky, and he has pitched that as the far more important meeting of the two compared to what might be discussed today.
All right, so setting the table for that future meeting, because it's really important to note that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky will not be at the discussion today. Are we hearing anything at this point from the other side, from Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, so Vladimir Putin spoke in Moscow yesterday, and he expressed appreciation for what he called energetic and sincere efforts by President Trump and by the Trump administration to stop the fighting. Interesting to hear that positive tone from him. Critics are adamant that Putin not be rewarded for his aggression, and some say that that's already happened with this meeting taking place on U.S. soil. So the fact that President Putin seems to be coming into it with a very positive attitude, and we do know with a somewhat strengthened position because Russia has been advancing into Ukraine and has been stepping up its attacks just over the course of this week, even leading up to this meeting. And President Trump, in fact, said today that he thinks that Russia is trying to strengthen its position going into the talks by having, taken over some more territory. Incremental gains, but doing what it can. The president, though, President Trump said he thinks that it's actually hurting his case because he has grown increasingly frustrated every time Vladimir Putin says that perhaps he's interested in ending the war and then continues the bombings, continues the killings. President Trump has repeatedly said, that has frustrated him and is turning him off for sure.
Alice, just a few seconds left. You mentioned on U.S. soil, just that fact is historic. The Russian president hasn't been on American soil in decades.
That's right. And, he hasn't been here in 10 years. He hasn't met with President Trump in 6 years. And it's the first time that any American president of the two has met with President Trump, or rather President Putin, since he launched this invasion on Ukraine. And so there's a lot at stake in terms of the precedent that's being set, in terms of the tone today of not allowing Putin to be rewarded for what he has done, but of also really trying to find some pathway to wind down what has been such a devastating and deadly war.
Alice, thanks so much.